I just visited 21 Mexican restaurants in Texas, and the average cost for 1 pound of chicken fajitas was over $40. So today I'll show you how to make them at home, not only way cheaper, but way better than you can get at any restaurant. You won't need to barbecue them over mesquite hardwood. You don't even need a grill. I'll show you how to do everything in a standard pan in your home kitchen. Now, many people online complain that chicken fajitas aren't a thing, and there is some truth to this claim because the Spanish word fajita literally translates to little belt or strip. Fajitas are typically made with the outside skirt steak of the cow, which is a long, narrow cut that resembles a belt. It's always grilled and cut across the grain into little strips, hence the name fajitas. So chicken fajitas, which are made with the breast of the chicken, are more of a Tex-Mex marketing term. Semantics aside, to make them, what you want to grab is a standard boneless, skinless chicken breast. To prepare it, we'll begin by removing the tenderloin from the bottom like this. Flip it over and notice the breast has a thinner side and a thicker side. Now make a cut crosswise roughly halfway through the breast, separating the two. Because fajitas are so thin and cook so quickly, we'll either need to butterfly or pound the fatter side until it's about 3/4 of an inch in thickness. This will ensure even cooking and help prevent the chicken from drying out. One of the biggest mistakes home cooks make with chicken fajitas is slicing them into strips before cooking them. This is not ideal because chicken breast is so lean, it's super easy to dry it out when you're cooking over such high heat. If you do this, you're really making more of a stir-fry dish. So you always want to keep your chicken in large pieces while they're cooking because there's much less surface area exposed to the heat. And this helps keep the chicken as juicy and tender as possible. Another way we can increase both the flavor and juiciness of our chicken is to use a brine. Standard recipes typically either use a marinade or dry spices. And these will make a decent fajita, but the problem with spices is they only season the surface of the meat. And a marinade, no matter how long you leave it, will only penetrate about 1 to 2 millimeters into the protein. A brine is much more effective than a marinade because it seasons the meat all the way through and improves both texture and juiciness. To make the fajita brine, let's start with 2 liters of water in a small pot. And to that, add 67 grams of salt. The volume measurement will vary depending on which kind of salt you're using, so I've included the most common types in the recipe document in the video description. Next, add a 1/4 cup of white sugar, half a teaspoon of cumin powder, 2 bay leaves, 10 garlic cloves, 2 teaspoons of Mexican oregano, and you should be able to find this on the spice aisle of most grocery stores. If you can't track it down, regular oregano will work fine. And finally, 2 teaspoons of black peppercorns. Bring the brine up to a boil and let it simmer for 1 minute. Stir everything together to make sure the salt and sugar are dissolved and kill the heat. And you need to let the brine cool down to room temperature before using it. When it's ready, add the chicken pieces to the brine and keep them in the refrigerator for 3 to 4 hours. While the chicken is brining, it's a perfect time to make the pineapple marinade. For our fajitas, we're using both a brine and a marinade. Combining a brine and a marinade is a great way to get chicken that is seasoned all the way through and that has that traditional sweet and savory Tex-Mex flavor. The most traditional marinade for chicken fajitas is 3 parts pineapple juice, 2 parts kikkoman soy sauce, always kikkoman, and 1 part water. You'll just add everything to a bowl and mix it together. And a note on pineapple juice. Every Mexican restaurant I've ever visited uses Dole, just the cheap canned kind you can find at any grocery store. One of the reasons pineapple juice works so well as a marinade is because it contains bromelain, an enzyme that breaks down protein and tenderizes meat. With fresh pineapple juice, the bromelain content is so high it can turn the meat to mush if we marinate it for too long. But canned pineapple juice is pasteurized, and this reduces the enzyme enough to marinate it for hours without affecting the texture. When the chicken is done brining, wash it under cold water and remove any bits of the herbs that have stuck to it. Then we'll add it to our pineapple soy marinade and refrigerate it for 4 to 8 hours. While our chicken is marinating, I'll show you how to make the 2 most popular types of fajita onions you'll see at good Mexican restaurants. For basic buttered fajita onions, you'll start by removing the top and the root and slicing the onion in half like this. After you remove the skin, you'll notice little lines running down each half. You want to cut the onion with the lines into about 1/2-inch slices. Cutting with the grain will help the onions keep their shape and prevent them from turning into mush. To cook the onions, let's add 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter to a large pot or a pan over medium heat. After it's melted, add 1 1/4 pounds of the sliced onions and stir them into the butter so they're all evenly coated. Then add 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of Knorr caldo de pollo chicken bouillon powder. You'll be able to find this at most grocery stores, Knorr is the brand used by every Mexican restaurant I've ever visited. It's an essential item in Tex-Mex cuisine. Then you'll cook the onions over medium to medium-high heat until you notice the edges are slightly browned, but the slices are still mostly translucent and the butter is emulsified into them. It should take about 5 to 10 minutes. When they're done, this is what they'll look like. Now, if you're having problems with the onion scorching and leaving that quarter-inch layer of burnt residue that's borderline impossible to scrape off, let me show you this natural non-stick pan I've been using in this video. Did you know you don't need a chemical coating for a pan to be non-stick? This is Kobach's titanium zero-coating non-stick fry pan. Instead of spraying their cookware with forever chemicals, Kobach uses their patented Lotus Nano technology, which etches over 100,000 ultra-fine micro-patterns into the pan's interior. And these microscopic ridges attract the oil and slightly raise whatever you're cooking off the surface to create a natural non-stick effect. And because it's not a coating, you can even use metal utensils. The pan is made from pure titanium, so it works on any stovetop, even induction. It's oven safe, and you can toss it in the dishwasher for easy cleanup. It's not a gimmick, it's high-quality cookware for people who are sick of replacing their non-stick pans every few years. So check out the link in the video description and use code FARMAGEDDON for 15% off your order. Thank you to Kobach for sponsoring this video. Now, if you've ever felt like something was missing from your fajita onions and they didn't taste like your favorite restaurant, I'll show you how they do it. So for the second type, which is more of a deeply caramelized, sweet and savory restaurant style, what a lot of Mexican places do is to make a sauce they add to the onions and cook them down in that. And it's super simple to make. So let's start by adding a 1/4 cup of sherry cooking wine to a small bowl. Then toss in a 1/4 cup of Kikkoman soy sauce, 1/2 teaspoon of granulated garlic, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 3/4 teaspoon of white sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of Knorr chicken bouillon powder. Give everything a whisk until it's well combined and set the sauce aside. To prepare the onions, it's the same process as the buttered kind, but you want to slice them slightly thinner, with the grain, into about 1/4 inch pieces. When you've got everything ready, melt 2 tablespoons of butter in a large pan over medium heat. Then add 1 1/4 pounds of the sliced onions and sweat them for a few minutes until they're translucent. Pour the sauce mixture in and toss the onions until they're well coated. Then continue cooking for several more minutes until you notice the sauce has completely evaporated and the onions are starting to stick to the bottom and have developed a deep brown color. It typically takes about 5 to 15 minutes. These are my favorite fajita onions. I don't know why no one makes them this way at home. You typically only see this style at good restaurants. You can prepare either type a few days in advance. Just keep them in the fridge after they've cooled down. And the last thing we'll need before we cook the fajitas is the foamy garlic butter sauce. This isn't standard in most Mexican restaurants, but if you make it, it will be one of the best things you've ever tasted before. I swear, I could mainline this stuff. This mantequilla de ajo sauce comes from Papacitos in Houston. They get a lot of flack online for being a chain, but their food is legit, and I think their chicken fajitas are the gold standard by which I judge all others. The recipe in this video is loosely based on their version and the recipe in Ford Fry's book Tex-Mex, which is the single best book ever written on Tex-Mex cuisine. Every recipe in it is incredible. So for the garlic butter sauce, let's start with 2 sticks of unsalted butter. And you'll want to let this sit out for several hours at room temperature until it's completely softened. Then we'll toss in 1 1/4 teaspoons of Knorr chicken bouillon, 2 teaspoons of freshly grated garlic, or 1/2 teaspoon of granulated garlic, and a 1/4 cup of dry white wine, preferably Chardonnay. Then you'll take an electric hand mixer and whisk the butter until the wine is completely emulsified into it. You've really got to do this either with a hand or a stand mixer. It's pretty much impossible to do this with a regular whisk. But I'll show you a quicker microwave version in a second if you don't have either of these. Once the wine is incorporated into the butter and you no longer see any liquid, that's it. You can store the butter in a covered container in the fridge for several days, or you can portion it and freeze it for several months. When you're ready to reheat the garlic butter, what you'll do is put a couple tablespoons in a ramekin and microwave it in very short bursts until the butter starts to foam and is completely melted. You need to keep an eye on it while you're heating it up because it will foam up considerably. If you don't have an electric or stand mixer but you do have a microwave, just add 1 stick of butter to a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap because it has a tendency to explode while radiating. Then zap it for about a minute or until it's completely melted. To finish, just add 3/4 teaspoon of chicken bouillon, 1 teaspoon of grated garlic, and 2 tablespoons of white wine from the last step, and whisk them into the melted butter. This microwave method will work in a pinch, but I've noticed the flavor is significantly better if you do it the first way. When you're ready to cook the fajitas, we'll begin by preheating an oven to 350 degrees. Then drain the chicken from the pineapple soy marinade and pat each piece dry with a paper towel. And you want to get them as dry as possible because any moisture will stop us from getting that richly browned exterior that is indicative of a well-made chicken fajita. That's what they call the fajita bark, a term presumably invented by a dog. But any moisture on the surface will inhibit the browning, so get them as dry as you can. Then we'll heat up some neutral oil in a pan over medium heat and season our chicken with a fajita spice mixture. This is just 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of granulated garlic, and half a teaspoon of Lowry's seasoning salt. And Lowry's is available at any grocery store on the spice aisle. Almost every Tex-Mex restaurant I've ever tried uses Lowry's to some degree, so I highly suggest you seek it out. When your oil is hot, add the chicken and cook it until it's browned on both sides. And one of the main problems with cooking chicken breast on the stovetop is that it's sometimes difficult to get it to 165 degrees internally before the exterior is overcooked and scorches. So when you've got some nice browning on both sides, pop the chicken in the oven until it's cooked all the way through. This is a much more gentle way to finish the chicken and will help prevent it from drying out. I generally pull my chicken when it's reading 160 degrees Fahrenheit to account for carryover cooking. When you're good, you need to let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes before slicing it. This will let the juices redistribute and you'll end up with a much better final product. While the chicken is resting, reheat the onions and microwave the garlic butter until it's foamy. And one thing to notice before you slice the chicken is the grain running along it. You always want to cut across this grain, which shortens the strands and keeps the chicken from becoming stringy. Then slice each portion of the chicken into about 1/2 inch pieces. If you've done it correctly, they should look like this. You can assemble the fajitas in a number of ways. Typically, it's served on a comal with the onions layered underneath and a side plate of accoutrements. But the way we typically eat it in Texas is to take a flour tortilla and layer it with some onions and chicken. Drizzle that with a bit of the garlic butter, then top it off with pico de gallo, cheddar cheese, a bit of sour cream, and some guacamole. This is a true Tex-Mex chicken fajita taco. To anyone who says these aren't authentic Mexican food, yeah, they were invented in Texas in the 1960s. But they are one of our most delicious culinary exports. And quickly, before the taste test, here's how to get that sizzling fajita effect you see at restaurants. What you'll do is heat up your comal on a stovetop or in the oven. Add a touch of oil, then layer the onions and sliced chicken on top. Right before you bring it out, splash the edges of the comal with a bit of liquid. Typically it's water, chicken broth, or some sort of citrus juice. And this will produce that classic steam effect you see when it arrives at your table. Now, let's give it a taste test and see how we did. The comedian Mitch Hedberg once said he wished someone would invent fajita cologne. When you're at a restaurant and that smell wafts by, you always wish you had ordered fajitas. But now you can make them at home much cheaper, and I promise, your neighbors will arrive unannounced. And if you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll like this one too. Thanks for watching. See you next time.